Welcome into Jungle Tales, a Pirate Baseball podcast. This week in Pirate Baseball, as we take a look back at East Carolina's 2-2 week. ECU got the week started with an 11-8 midweek win down at Segra Stadium in Fayetteville, and then carried that momentum into Friday and won a fourth consecutive game, 7-0. Ethan Norby was just tremendous, and we'll dive into that performance here shortly. And unfortunately, the Pirates dropped the next two games 9-1, and then a heartbreaker in 10 innings today, 4-3 to the Chanticleers, and the 24th ranked Chanticleers at that. But right now, before we dive into all that happened in the Pirates 2-2 start, very excited to welcome into the show former East Carolina pitcher from 1988 to 1991 for the legend Coach O, and that is John White. John, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bubba. I appreciate you having me join, and I look forward to talking some Pirate baseball for the week.
No doubt. I mentioned the Pirates had won 4 straights, and unfortunately have dropped the last 2 now, but we've certainly seen some progress in areas, and definitely plenty to still clean up and improve upon. But I know you watch pretty much every game, be it live or archived on ESPN Plus. So before we dive into this week's and some of the specifics, what's your take on the first 25% of the season?
Yeah, as far as the pitching goes, it's as advertised. They have a lot of strong arms. There's a little bit too many walks going on. Everybody knows that, but they can start cleaning that up. But starting pitching has been good. Starting to lengthen their innings out, and so that part has been as I thought it would be, and as advertised. As far as the hitting goes, it's been slow to pick up. They lead the conference in home runs, but they're starting to pick up. I see the batting averages start to tick upwards. You have some solid bats coming alive. Colby Wallace and Baron Walker starting to heat up, and it's just been a slow tick upwards for the batting, but it looks like it's starting to come around, and they need to start stringing a little bit more hits together with runners on base. Left a lot of runners on this weekend, so things like that, and cleaning up the base on balls from the pitching staff. But as far as the first half of the season, they played a tough Carolina team, lost all 3. It could have been a 1 or 2 swings of the bat, changed a game or 2 in that series. So they're still trying to gel together. They're coming together, and I think the bats we'll start seeing some hits strung together and start getting more runs. And I'm pretty proud of how that pitching staff has looked so far, other than the fact that, a little too many walks. And so it looks like, they're building upon something, and hopefully, they turn this thing around and, start winning a lot of games and get back to Pirate baseball we know.
Yeah, no doubt. And you take a look at the Tar Heels, of course, and when the Pirates played them, they were top 5 in America, and they did drop a series this weekend to ACC newcomer Stanford. They were at Boshamer Stadium, which was a little surprising, losing games 1 and 3. But obviously a club that is very much a threat to get to Omaha and potentially win it all. And there, along with the likes of Clemson and Florida State and some others in the ACC. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that pitching staff they have is tremendous. That's going to be a one to watch. They have obviously they have the big arm in DeCaro, but they have a lot of young talent on there as well. And their hitting looked like it started to come alive as well. So, yeah, the usual suspects are in the top 5 are winning still. Florida State, UNC did drop 2 or 3 to Stanford. And you see Tennessee and LSU doing their thing. So those usual suspects up in the top 5, and then you have Clemson doing well. Wake Forest has came alive. Duke had a bad start to the season. They're coming back. They're coming back around, it seems. Virginia's kind of been a disappointment. as far as what we, in the ACC. They on paper they're one of the better teams in the country, but they just hadn't produced on the field yet. So it's early, just like East Carolina trying to come together and gel as a team, which we have a lot of newcomers. So that's not something that was not unforeseen. So
Yeah, UVA dropping a series to Boston College.
yeah, that was surprising.
I was, a little surprised when I saw that they lost on Friday night, and then, they did bounce back with what was also a surprising 22-16 victory in Saturday's game, and then dropping the finale today.
Yeah. Yeah, then Virginia. A lot of people thought they were top 10 most of the year, but they've kind of struggled a little bit. So I'm sure at the end of the year they'll be there like their typical selves. So growing pains, it looks like, for a lot of teams.
So as we dive into the Pirates, taking a look at the midweek game, as I mentioned, down in Fayetteville, it was originally scheduled for the D-BAP, but got moved to Segra Stadium.
Yep.
And I believe had some work going on with the lights there, if I'm not mistaken, in Durham. But whatever the case, you had an 11-8 midweek win over the Running Bulldogs. It's a team that you knew could really swing the bats. They had done so the previous weekend up at App State in a series that they dropped to the Mountaineers, but they hit several home runs. And
Yeah, I
John,
think
are you getting feedback on my end? I have a few viewers chiming in saying that they're hearing a little feedback.
from your end. No, I don't hear anything from you.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think Gardner-Webb had one guy hit 4 home runs up there in Appalachian State.
Yes, and because he came into the game on Tuesday night having 7 for the season, is a transfer from Erskine.
Yeah, yeah, and Gardner-Webb's a college I'm familiar with, being from Gaston County. We had a lot of players that I played with, football, baseball, that went there. My high school Legion coach, Legion Hall of Fame, Daryl Van Dyke, played baseball at Gardner-Webb. So I'm familiar with it. I like what Coach Chester is doing as far as the scheduling is going. He's scheduled, Wake, South Carolina, East Carolina, Georgia Tech, UNC, Clemson, Duke. So he's definitely going out there to try and, make a statement. Says, we're going to get better. We got to beat some of the better teams around our area. So I like what he's doing down there.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now
Definitely.
I've gotten a little bit of feedback now from you, now, Bubba, just now.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, that's better. Yep.
All right, sounds good. I was signing in on my phone, see if that's any better. Let us know, JB. I appreciate you chiming in as always, Justin.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the Gardner-Webb game. Yeah, it looks like they were coming out with a piecemeal game, and East Carolina is trying to figure out, the pitchers, who would step up. It was kind of unsettled for both teams. I think Gardner-Webb ended up using 10 pitchers in the game, and ECU, they broke open there in the second inning, or I can't remember exactly the inning, but Barron hit the 2-run, and then Irby hit a home run, and opened up a little bit of a lead, and then Gardner-Webb, you know, chipped back into that lead and eventually took the lead, and then it looked like Jake kind of came out there, and I call him like the father of the bullpen. He kind of comes out there and gives you a settling feeling when he's on the mound.
right.
And he just, he brought it on home, and yeah, that was. I think ECU scored maybe the 7th and the 8th and took the lead for good, but he kind of settled everything down from a pitching standpoint.
Yeah, he did. It was, as you described, kind of your stereotypical midweek game with a lot of offense. The pitching on the whole was not particularly sharp, and you had some big swings from Walker Barron, Austin Irby, and the Pirates were able to settle
Yeah.
things down there in the mid to late innings and seize control of the game after falling behind 8-7 and there in the 6th or 7th.
Yeah, and Irby, I've talked to you before. I love his swing. He had a great game. He not as big on the weekend, but you can tell there's some big things are going to come out of his swing. And those 2 home runs there get ECU on the scoreboard, and then Barron's starting to come along with the bat. You could see that all week. And yeah, so it was a typical, like you mentioned, midweek game. You're gonna have a little bit more scoring, and the coach is actually trying to find a pitcher that's going to come in there and give him a good 3 or 4 innings and kind of settle things down for everybody. And that's exactly what he got out of a veteran in Hunter.
Yeah, Jake Hunter. One, it was just great that young man was able to bounce back as quickly as he was. Going with the brace for Tommy John as opposed to um, the surgery, and definitely did not think that we'd have Jake on opening weekend as we did, and he's continued to progress from there. It's going to be interesting to see, what role he takes as the season moves
Yeah.
along. But
Yeah, he's a good, and he's a good pitcher. I mean, he doesn't have that electric 94, 95 going on, but he knows how to pitch, and that's, he's impressed me, especially after the injury. So that's a pretty cool thing to see.
right, and so after getting that 11-8 win over Gardner-Webb on Tuesday evening there at Segra Stadium, you have number 24 Coastal Carolina coming in. The Shots were coming off a 11 inning 5-4 loss to North Carolina at Boshamer Stadium, and you knew you were getting a very well-rounded club. I'd spoken with a current Division I head coach that had competed against the Chanticleers in a single game on the weekend in a round robin format, and they said very good starting pitching and bats as strong as always. Not quite as dynamic on the base pass. Historically under Gary Gilmore, and now obviously first year under Coach Schnall, who's a longtime Coastal Carolina guy with a brief stint at UCF as well, there for 3 years. But the Shots are known for their offense and stealing a lot of bases. Has not been the case thus far this year. However, they do still swing it very well, and but Ethan Norby, just
Yeah.
unbelievable. 19
Yeah.
Ks, struck out
Wow.
the side in 4 out of the first 5 frames, and just one of the more dominant performances that you'll see. He definitely has to be up for National Pitcher of the Week.
Yeah, most definitely. And yeah, going back to Coastal Carolina, well coached, great defense. You can see that. Yeah, they're not running as much, but their bats, 1 through 4, kind of scary. But I think when Norby started the game and he was just up there dealing, he caught a couple strikes that were right on the paint, maybe a little bit off, but once those were called strikes and he figured out the strike zone, and they were unsettled in the box because Norby's ready to pitch right away, and they were trying to figure out you know uh, when they step out of the box and they step back in, that you better be ready to go when Norby's pitching. So as soon as the umpire gives them the nod, he's pitching. And for me as a hitter, I was a pitcher, but as a hitter, I would stay in the box and just, but getting out and coming back and then having to, as soon as you put your head up and Norby's coming at you, it was tough. But yeah, when he was in a zone, that happens from time to time. And it's a special day when that happens. You have to soak it in. They don't come along very often. I was fortunate enough to have a couple in high school, and you just you're kind of in a fog. And I think if you saw the broadcast, you'd see that he kind of is walking off, going, "I don't know what's happening," but he's in a fog. Nobody's wanting to screw with him, and mess up his mojo. But mowing down in the first inning, all 3, and he still, to be honest, after 106 pitches, he still had it. He struck out the last batter he faced, and I know they wanted to pull him after 106, but I'm sure if he had, tried to get the record, 20 Ks in a game, he probably could have got it. Probably would have had to get up to about 115 pitches maybe, so I think they wanted to stay away from that. When he got to the 18th strikeout, it reminded me of a former teammate, Aiden Butler, who had struck out 18 in 1992. Rest in peace to Aiden. He had passed away this year. But yeah, there's not much you can say other than the fact that he was utterly dominant. And then they were, have the great fortune of being able to bring in another Ethan. So that's the E squared combo, I call him. And ended up being 22 Ks out of 27 outs. So you're not going to lose many games when that happens. So that was just a dominant performance.
Yeah, definitely not. You think about over the last decade, slightly more, the likes of Jeff Hoffman,
Yeah.
Gavin Williams, Treya Savage, et cetera, and so many tremendous pitchers, and none of them had accomplished what Ethan did, and just seeing the reaction on social media from around the country. I mean, Mike Rooney at D1 Baseball was messaging me, saying, and give me more information about this.
Yeah.
What's working for him, and like Cliff said post game, everything was working for him. He was dialed in. I think out of 25, 26, however many batters, he had 92% of his first pitches were strikes.
Yeah. He was all around the plate. His backdoor curve on the right-handers was, buckling their knees, and I don't think he gave up a hit for the first 6 innings. I can't remember when they got
Yep,
to
he
it.
was he was perfect through six, and I
Yeah.
didn't have a chance to go back and glance at the box score, but clearly did not have many three-ball counts.
No, and this is a game he'll remember forever. These don't leave, even though during the game you're kind of in that fog and you're in a zone, and you know, really when you're in that zone, you don't hear anything. You're out there on the mound, and all the chatter and noise goes away, and the bats came alive pretty early. He didn't need that many runs, but by the Colby Wallace's 2 home runs, the grand slam, 6 RBIs, that was all that Ethan really needed, to be honest. Going as good as he was going that day, it was a performance for the ages, one of the best in the history of East Carolina.
Yep, and as you mentioned, the record is 20 strikeouts for a single game. That was Hal Baird against George Washington, if I'm not mistaken, back in 1970. Of course, the legendary player, but then also,
Legendary coach.
perhaps just as well, if not more so, known for his time as a head coach at East Carolina and Auburn, coaching the likes of Bo Jackson and
That's
Frank
right.
Thomas.
And
But
John Gast.
yeah,
John Gast.
and John
But
Gass.
John came our way. Yeah. So, yeah. No, Hal, he handed the reins over to Coach O, and you saw what Coach O did in his career. And Coach Billy Best, went down and coached with Hal down in Auburn. And, Billy Best is one of the, obviously he's been a long time scout, but he knows baseball better than anybody, and great coach. And he's also a very good scout. So, yeah, that's some history there. 20 Ks. I found that out this year when you told me. I didn't realize that he had the record, Coach Baird.
Right. And in the first few weeks of the season, there were some decisions to be made on our PGXGLOVES.com pitcher of the week. This week, it was needless to say, a clear-cut choice with Ethan Norby, 7 1/3. As you mentioned, 103 pitches, no runs, 3 hits, 19 strikeouts, and not a single free pass. So congratulations to Ethan on an excellent effort, and he was finally the recipient of a win after pitching well to date. But the Pirates had not won on Friday night until their 7-0 victory over the 24th ranked Chanticleers this weekend. But as you mentioned in the game, the Pirates with 7 runs, all 7 of those 2-out RBIs, just tremendous, and that allowed East Carolina to overcome with those 2 bombs, the grand slam and a 2-run shot by Seawall, which was his first multi-home run game of his career. that allowed ECU to overcome 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position, and that was something that would unfortunately become a trend throughout the weekend, and would be one of the things that would do the Pirates in Sunday's 4-3
Yeah.
10-inning loss to Coastal.
Yeah, and I was going to say the Coastal on their Friday starter was a freshman. He was South Carolina Pitcher of the Year, Luke Jones, and he is going to have some growing pains like that, as we saw Jenkins. If you want to segue into Saturday, Jenkins had similar. As a freshman, you're going to have growing pains when you play against this type of competition. Coming out of high school where you utterly dominate probably. So I know his father was at college at Charleston. And so he's grew up baseball, but yeah, South Carolina Pitcher of the Year, coming in as the Friday starter for a Coastal Carolina team. That's some big shoes to fill. But he's going to be a good one. He just has some growing pains and missing spots, and he wasn't really fooling anybody there. Second inning, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's pretty impressive to have a top 25 team with a freshman Friday starter. So wanted to give a little shout out to him.
Yeah, definitely. That was a surprise on Thursday evening when Coastal, on their official baseball X account, aka Twitter, said that it would not be Cullen McKay, the UVA transfer who had pitched so well thus far this season. Perhaps. Did you hear anything throughout the weekend? Was he
I was
battling an
wondering.
injury or whatnot?
Yeah, I was wondering, but I heard nothing. So
Yeah,
I didn't know. Yeah, because they wanted to keep, I guess, Fluky in the same his same spot.
right. Much like Sean Jenkins on
Yeah,
opening weekend.
that's right. That's right. And yeah, so going into Saturday. Coastal was at the plate on Friday, very uncomfortable, never could get settled in there, and next thing you know, they're having to make decisions on swing or not swinging. So on Saturday, Jenkins is a lot different. He's a lot more deliberate. So those guys were able to get in the box, get comfortable. So it was a lot different for Coastal on Saturday, and he was missing up in the zone, missing out a little bit. He just didn't quite have the command of all his pitches that we've seen so far this year. Um, so yeah, I think Coastal was probably relieved that they could get in the box and actually have a few seconds to settle in. And the two home runs that were hit by Coastal were bombs into the wind. One of them, I think, went over the trees out in right field. They were launched, and so yeah, it was a control problem. Something he'll work on, but he's a young pitcher. He's only 17. That's shocking to me. He's out there, been pitching well. So Coastal's defense was good. They steadily built up a lead. We couldn't hit, with runners in scoring position when they got there, and Fluky was throwing 95, 96 miles an hour. So it's tough to get a good barrel on the ball when it's coming in like that. He had a good outing. So yeah, it was a lot of, and they just kind of ticked up the score, before you know it, ninth inning, and we're down too much to overcome. So
Yeah. You referenced those home runs by the Chanticleers and no doubters to right field. Ty Dooley, the shortstop, and you'd already mentioned, how well he and Barthel, and how well they had played
yeah.
defensively, and they clearly can swing the bats very well also.
That's right. Yeah. If you notice, the 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the ninth hole hitter, they went 9 for 16 in that game, 7 RBI, 6 runs between them. So, yeah, they were a lot happier than they were the night before. So, yeah, they came together and they put it together, just a progressive game that built upon itself. And before you know it, the game was over and ECU was shut out. And one thing I was going to point out, I noticed that the Bodine, great catcher for them, is starting to do what a lot of I've seen, and heard a lot of catchers doing, and that's instead of putting the glove up in a zone for the pitcher to see. They keep it low and then they bring it up as the pitch comes in. I don't know if you've seen that new psychology of catcher trying to get more calls with the umpire, but
I
uh, I
have.
did I did notice that he was doing that. I know we're not doing it yet, but it is being taught a lot more now. So
Yes, I appreciate you pointing that out. And that's excellent observation. And yeah, what a catcher he is. And you would see it throughout the weekend. Not to get off on too much of a tangent, but as far as one of the things that jumped out about Bodine is that play that he made. I'm trying to remember who it was. It's either a bunt or swinging bunt there to the third base side, and he made a sliding um,
yeah,
fielding attempt and just basically fielded it and pivoted on his knees and threw it all in one motion and
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. He's quick like a cat behind the plate. He moves around very quickly. He throws runners out. They've only had one runner successful this year against him. Yeah, I think we had maybe one today. Uh, I don't know. I can't remember. Might have been Dixon got one, but yeah, he's throwing runners out. He's back there, blocking pitches. In the ninth inning, you could see where he was having to block, guys throwing those sliders in the dirt, trying to get swings. And if one bounces away, he's quick to the ball. So he did get today. He did get hit in the back of the head on a swing. I wasn't sure he's going to be able to get back up, but he did. But he's a heck of a player, and I heard Mully talking about the scouts. Were rolling film as every time he was up at the plate. So he's got people looking at him. Heck of a player.
You talked about Cameron Flukie, the 6'6" righty for Coastal. He had his struggles thus far, in at least a couple of his starts, but you saw um, why they're so high on him, why he's that number 2 slot in the rotation. And 7 innings, obviously no runs, 4 hits, 5 strikeouts, and a walk. He did hit a batter, but 91 pitches was all he needed to navigate those 7 innings. And clearly his best performance of the year. And he was running it up there 94, 95 rather consistently.
Yeah, he was, and he got, he had a great outing. I mean, put in 7, and then their bullpen is going to be great this year. I kind of watched. I know they had, maybe one guy had some issues with, but yeah, for the most part, they got some great arms on that team. So you look for them to kind of hover around in the top 25 and be there in regional time for sure. And uh, so yeah, he was bringing it mid 90s, and that's tough to hit, and he kept the hitters off balance a little bit, but um, yeah. So yeah, that game was kind of like I said, they plugged away and they kept scoring runs, and before you know it, the game was kind of out of hand. So
Right. And, one of the positives, and the Pirates did use, I think, looking at the box score here, 7 pitchers in that game. And the one who logged the most innings was Nick Moran. Of course, Nick had struggled the Liberty transfer, and veteran southpaw, who we knew is capable. But I know Coach Godwin referenced this in the post game, and he mentioned it on multiple other occasions that he and Austin Knight were kind of retooling some things, so fine tuning those mechanics, and he was getting too much over the top instead of his more natural arm slot that he had success with previously. And Nick did some nice things. He did issue a few free passes, but in 3 innings didn't surrender a hit or a run and struck out 3.
yeah, and after the struggles, you were hoping to see that he'd get some innings under his belt that were successful, so he can build upon that, get his confidence back, because they're going to need him a good lefty arm out of the pen. So, yep, it was good to see that as well.
And you also saw Michael Irby and Tyler Brashear. I know for sure it was Irby's first appearance, and perhaps Brashear as well.
Yeah, there's one thing. ECU has a lot of arms this year, and really they got a couple guys there right now that we know can come in and dominate you. Yeah, today we had a little trouble with Ethan, but we'll talk about that as we talk about the Sunday game. But yes, a lot of arms in the bullpen, so you kind of feel a lot better this year going into the midweek games as well. they should be able to handle their own a little bit better. We struggled a little bit with midweek games last year. So, yeah, I feel good about the bullpen. It looks pretty strong, lefty, righties, and a couple dominant types in there. And with a good, and then we still have a couple players that aren't back yet. I'm not sure what their status is. A couple pitchers.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and bring folks up to speed with what information we have. You're of course referring to the Texas A&M transfer Brett Antolik,
Yeah.
big right-hander originally out of Pennsylvania, someone that East Carolina recruited heavily before he decided to go to Texas A&M, and unfortunately we were able to get him on the bounce back, and he's a guy that will run it up there in the mid-90s, 95, 96, has excellent all-speed stuff as well. I saw him throw a bullpen prior to that Saturday game at the DBAP against the Tar Heels, and I would not be surprised. This is just me talking here on certainly no inside information, but whether it's this weekend or that Memphis weekend, I would not be surprised to see Brett Antolik, Ryan Towers, the Loyola Marymount transfer, junior southpaw. He, on the other hand, is going to be a little bit longer, probably. I'd say early to mid-April, based on how things are trending right now, because I believe he's either yet to or just started picking up a baseball and throwing a little.
Yeah, so that was, I think that coming into the year, people were thinking that you had, a couple starters there, and Norby would be, your your bullpen guy, your best bullpen guy, arm, long, but it kind of changed, and now he's out there out front, and then look what happened. He came up with one of the greatest games in the history of East Carolina baseball. So it's just a matter of, players stepping up and to having to do what they have to, when there's injuries, and hopefully these guys can contribute this year and be a big part of the pitching staff, which is already a strong pitching staff. So look forward to seeing a Texas A&M guy come in and start playing. I'm not sure when, but like you mentioned, hopefully it's sooner than later. And yep.
And I mentioned Antolik throwing that pregame bullpen. Obviously, we've certainly not seen anything like that out of Towers. What we have seen out of Towers is during games in the past, it's been Jake Hunter that's been out in front of the dugout dancing. This year, it's been the LMU transfer Ryan Towers.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny, but yeah, hopefully he can come back and contribute. I haven't seen either one of them, to be honest with you, pitch. So for me, it's all about what I've heard. I've listened to some people on some podcasts talk about them and their time and what they can deliver for East Carolina. It sounds promising, so hopefully that comes to fruition.
Final note on game 2 before we move on to today's series finale, and that is, I mentioned how the Pirates had 7 2-out RBIs in game 1, 7-0 win. In Coastal's 9-1 victory on Saturday, they had 6 2-out RBIs.
Yeah, yeah, and they were ticking away. I mean, it was like 2 runs here, 1 run, 2, and every inning seemed like they were had a chance to do something. So. It was a good performance by them. It was bounced back after after getting dominated on Friday. So yeah, so that led
Also,
us into Sunday. They wanted to win the series. We wanted to win the series. So it was going to be a good ball game, and it didn't disappoint.
it definitely didn't disappoint, and while we're on the injury front, we talked about Antolik and Towers. On the positional side, Justin Butts chiming in via Facebook. And again, we are on Facebook now as well as YouTube. So if you have not already, like and follow our Facebook page, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel. But Justin says that he's hearing that Riley Johnson may be available this weekend against William and Mary. I'm assuming that's when you say next weekend, you're talking about the series with William and Mary, correct, Justin? So if you would clarify that in the comment section, but
Yeah, and that's obviously he's a huge part of the offense. I mean, and not only that, he's a leader on the team, and his defense is exceptional out there in center field. I've been thinking about what's going to happen at the top of the lineup and how the center. Obviously he plays center field, so how they shift around the defender. So I haven't heard Coach talk about that yet. So I guess that'll be to be seen. But yeah, having Riley back will be a tremendous boost to this offense. Plus, he's a leader on the team. So I look for. I mean, he's really like a player of the year type conference player. So yeah, it's a huge loss when you don't have him in the game. So when he comes back, that's a big plus.
Definitely. And transitioning to Sunday's game, and you mentioned you expected a kind of a dogfight, closely contested game, not necessarily the pitcher's duel that we saw for the majority of the day, with very few runs scored, although there were a combined 22 hits.
Yeah, yeah.
13 of those for East Carolina. We were able to, after a scoreless first inning, it was nice to see Braxton Trammell, have a RBI double.
Yeah, yeah. Start getting some more doubles in there. That we know they can hit bombs and get some more doubles in there. Start producing some of these runs. That first get runners on second and third, score them both. Yeah, and yeah, it was kind of a quiet game there. Start with Eichhoff. For them, you know, he's a calming presence as well. One of the older guys, and he's out there doing his thing. And we had Lance Williams on the mound, and he had good stuff. He looked good. I know that it seems like he's around this maybe 60 pitch count now. I know it was around 50. So he's starting to extend out, and that'll be good to have him get up there so he can start throwing more innings. But he did well. He pounds the zone. I mean, his pitches are competitive. That's what I love about him. He gets a guy 0-2, 1-2. He's not wasting pitches. He's painting, and he's making the hitter think on every pitch. So that stands out for Lance, and I think he's going to be a great contributor for the team.
No doubt. You heard, leading into the season that he had electric stuff, and that's definitely the case. Um,
Yeah.
and after last Sunday, I was just relieved to see him getting to start the day because, if you recall, he had thrown probably 40 or 45 pitches. Was not as sharp as he was today, but there with one out in the top of the third against Virginia Tech, the trainer came out along with Cliff Godwin, and Lance was lifted from the game with a little forearm stiffness, but clearly he's okay. And
Yeah, I think Coach Godwin did mention on a little post game interview there on the field that he might have had a little tweak in his back, and they didn't want to risk anything. So it does look like he's building up some pitcher strength, and right now he's sitting around 55, 60 pitches, probably max. It'll keep going up, but yeah, he looked good.
Right. And to clarify, for our viewers and listeners, the lower back tightness that you referenced, that was after today's game in Cliff's post game. 4 innings of shutout baseball, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, and a walk, and 66 pitches for the talented freshman Lance Williams. Unfortunately, when Brad Pruitt, who's been so good thus far, with the exception of one outing, Prue, in an inning and 2/3, did not surrender a hit, but he allowed an earned run because of 4 free passes, 3 of which were walks.
Yeah, and coming into the game, he's 24 strikeouts over 12 innings, but he also had 8 walks. So that's too many walks. Obviously, when he's got his electric stuff, he can get away with a walk here and there, but eventually they're going to catch up to you. And today his stuff was not quite up to what we're used to seeing when he's striking out 2 batters an inning, and the walks got to him, and they went up on us and until that 9th inning, and then I think we had bases loaded 3 times in the last 3 innings. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, or 4 innings, 3 times in the last 4 innings.
Yep, I know. For the game, the Pirates, as John referenced there, really struggled with runners in scoring position. You were able to overcome it in Friday's game when you went 2 for 12 because of the two long balls from Colby Wallace, and one of which was a grand slam, and getting 6 runs on 2 swings allowed you to overcome that lack of productivity with runners in scoring position. But today, 1 out of 16, Walker Barron with that one there in the bottom of the ninth that allowed ECU to force extra innings, and 0 for 4 with the bases loaded, as you referenced. And on the weekend, 3 out of 32 with runners in scoring position. And quite frankly, that's simply not going to get it done, and especially when you combine it. Looking at the numbers for the ECU pitching staff, the strikeout to free pass ratio. Um, Clearly, it was tremendous on Friday, 22 strikeouts to 1 free pass. But in the last 2 games of the series, ECU struck out 17, but issued 19 free passes, 13 walks, and 6 hit batters. Compared to Coastal Carolina, they had 19 strikeouts and issued 8 free passes. So there you go.
Yeah, and then once again today, Jake come in and kind of got everything settled for a minute there, and we got tied the ball game up there in the ninth, and right out the bat, his stuff might not have been as sharp today. Not sure, but his ball did not, cut downward as much as I've seen it in the past. It kind of hung up in there right at the knees, and the guy deposited it in left field. It was a pretty long home run too. I saw them looking past the trees out there. So, yeah, that was unfortunate, but we still, trying to make some noise in the bottom, see if we can come back. And unfortunately, we had a ground out there to kind of an anticlimactic ending to the game, but it was a good game overall, excellent game, and you had a feeling it was going to come. Both teams trying to battle to win the series, and Coastal came away with it.
Yeah, like you said, when Jake came in, he inherited a bases loaded, no out jam, and just gave up one. Uh, so he gave you a chance, and
Yeah, and Ethan, I was going to tell you one of the things about Ethan Young. One, I heard this stat today
I
from.
say that I may be mixing up Jake's. It may have been Ethan Young, but I recall us getting out of that bases loaded, no out
Yeah,
jam,
oh
only
yeah,
giving up a run. That's where you had the play at the plate that
yeah,
was
that was it. I think
reviewed
that
for
was.
several minutes.
Yeah, that was. I think that was Ethan. But yeah, so that was so close that, like we talked during the game, I don't think they could have reversed that call if he had been called safe or out on the field. There was just not enough evidence of what really happened. So that was a good job of coming in there, and only holding them to 1 run in that situation. And Ethan has given up, 33% of the base runners he inherits score. But you got to think about when they bring him in. I mean, he's been so good that he's always going to inherit runners when he comes in, and it's usually going to be in a tough situation. And he did a good job there to limit to 1 run. Um, but yeah, the defense for Coastal Carolina up the middle is awesome. Third baseman was good. They just have a sound defense, and as a pitcher, when you have that type of situation, you're just a lot more comfortable throwing. And so, yeah, great game. And yeah, the pitcher arms weren't quite as sharp today, other than the starter, Lance. And it is what it is. A Sunday game, you're starting to wear down from the week. So they'll be back out there battling soon enough.
On the offensive side, you and I were discussing this before we went live, John, and that's how the bats have continued to come along. Obviously, there's still plenty of room for improvement, but you're seeing the progress that you would hope to see, despite not getting the clutch hits in the first. I guess what it was maybe 11 games. ECU had only had 10 plus hits on 2 occasions, and now in the last 4, you've had or this week, and you had the Pirates going 10-plus hits in 3 out of their 4 games. So with Saturday's game where they had 6 being the exception.
Yeah, yep, like you said, and you can start looking at their batting averages and a lot more hits. It's starting to go up, so it's trending in a good direction. It's positive to see, and hopefully, like we both said, they get some more doubles in there. They've been hitting some long balls, but just a little more consistency with getting runners in. And I think they've settled in with a good leadoff hitter right now. Excuse me.
Taking a look at some of the top performances of the week. We'll certainly lead the way with Walker Barron, who's our PGXGLOVES.com Player of the Week. Walker, he did have one hitless game, which was Saturday, but the other 3 games he had multiple hits, including 2 3-hit performances. He had the home run against Gardner-Webb, 2 runs batted in, 4 runs scored. Today he had the game-tying single in the 9th. And Walker Barron, 8 for 18 on the week. He is our PGXGLOVES.com Player of the Week. And John, as a former pitcher, if you would, talk about what you've seen out of Walker defensively behind the plate, in addition to all these tough ABs that he's having.
Yeah, other than he's been producing on the offensive side here lately, but yeah, defensively, he's very comfortable to throw to. I mean, you can just tell, and from a defensive perspective, he's hard to run on. Yeah, they got maybe a couple stolen bases, but he's able to keep the runners at bay. So yeah, as a whole, you got an experienced guy. I mean, he's played every single inning this year, which is, if a lot of fans don't know, that's tough to do at college level. Usually, you have a guy that's going to catch one other game that week, but he's caught every game, and yeah, so he's comfortable to throw to and defensively he's sound. He's got a good arm. He's going to throw runners out. So from a defensive perspective, I think none of the pitchers on the team have anything to worry about. I mean, I don't think they worry about it. He makes a good partnership with all the pitchers, obviously.
And something else of note, for a catcher, Walker Barron runs pretty well. That's something that Mike Mullis on today's broadcast was noting. Mully being a former catcher, and then referenced other catchers, just saying that that's something that you're not going to typically see. A catcher laying down a drag bunt.
Yeah, yeah. Eventually, catcher's knees, are not going to be the best, but he does run very well. And yeah, trying to drop a bunt, that was surprising, but I don't think I've heard of a catcher doing that in a long time. So yeah, but I was fortunate enough to pitch to Tommy Easton and Corey Short, and every catcher's different. Every pitcher will tell you that, and you just got to kind of sync up between the two of you, and kind of get your groove going on between. And it's a partnership that goes through your career, and you learn the nuances of what they want to do. They can see the field better than anybody. So they're the field general, and you're the pitcher that has to deliver. So you have to have a lot of confidence in that, and it's obvious the ECU pitching staff has a lot of confidence in him. Coach does, and he's caught every game. I'm wondering if that is going to be able to be maintained for the rest of the year, but obviously it won't. But he's done a tremendous job so far.
In addition to Walker Barron, Colby Wallace had an excellent week after going 0 for 4 against Gardner-Webb, and coach put him in the 9-hole back-to-back 2 for 3 games, including that 6 RBI game in Friday's 7-0 win, which included a grand slam. That was a no-doubter, over the trees or in the top of the trees in the left field jungle, and then he had today 2 more hits, 2 for 5. As he was put back up in the 3-hole, like Coach Godwin had noted in Saturday's post game, that would be the case. That he said, "I assure you, he will not be in the 9-hole tomorrow. That he's just too good for us not to bat more in the top or middle of the lineup." And Austin Irby had the 2 home run game against Gardner-Webb, his first multi-home run game, 4 bombs now in the season. He did some nice things this weekend, especially in today's game. He was one of 5 Pirates with multi-hit games. I'll tell you, and this is a guy you and I were talking about our options in the outfield, and at the time I did not know that Drew Downs was sick. As far as him not being in the lineup today, because I was initially surprised, and then I saw on social media that he was obviously he had contracted the flu, and
Yeah.
but
So
Drew.
for the listeners, real quick, it seems like the flu might be running through the locker room right now. So a few players have been sick. So he happened to be one of them. So he wasn't available.
But Drew, he's having a heck of a freshman season thus far. The former Vandy commit, um, Drew 4 for 7 with 4 walks and a hit by pitch. And so he had reached base in 9 out of his 12 plate appearances.
Yeah.
And then we had seen much the same from Roger Vergara. Not as many hits, but one of the reasons, and we continue to see him get starts in left field, is because despite only having 2 or 3 hits, you know, he's been walking or getting hit by pitches, and yes, his batting average is around 200, but his on base percentage is probably about 450.
Yeah. Yeah. So those guys at the top of the lineup, they're table setters. So uh, if he can get on base, or even at the bottom of the lineup, you want guys that can get on base. And you saw that coach has got Braden Burris up there at the one hole, freshman, and he was on base a lot as well. So yeah, and then you let your guys like Kobe Wallace and those guys come up and bring them in, and that's what they need. Need more runs. It's been kind of a up and down. Yeah, they have a game here and there where they've scored, but yeah, a little more consistency on scoring with the runners in scoring position, and I think all will be well with Pirate baseball.
Yeah, Braden Burris, talented freshman
Snow Hill.
from Green Central, Cliff Godwin's alma mater.
Yeah,
But Braden 5 for 7 on the week. Those first 2 performances were in pinch hit / late inning defensive replacement roles, and then he got the start. And today had 2 hits, and he really looks good at the plate. He had 2 hits in game 1, and then his second game, caved 4 times. So Cliff set him down for a little bit so he could see things from a different perspective, and he certainly responded in a big way. And I mentioned today that prior to the game that he was batting 318. His on base percentage was 318, and I think it was 22 plate appearances that he had not been issued a single walk or been hit by a pitch. But today, I think he had 1 of each. So he was 2 for 3 with a walk and an HBP, and so 800 on base percentage. So not exactly going about things uh, from a numbers standpoint the way Drew Downs and Roger Vergara are, but those 3 guys, just continue to find ways on the base pass.
that's right, and they're going to need that, and they're table setter type guys, and that's what the team needs, and so we can get the big guys driving them in, and I think it'll be. I think everything will be fine. I see a good trend happening with the bats, and um, pitching is going to be solid. So I see good things coming. We got so coming up this week. I think at the end of the week we go to William and Mary for 3, and then we're at Richmond for 2. Or no, we have William and Mary at home, and then Richmond for VCU 2 games during
Correct.
midweek.
Yep. We have a five game week. Before we take a look at what lies ahead for the Pirates, one other note on the week as a whole. Defensively, the Pirates fielding percentage is now up to where you would expect to see it, 976, and just one error in 4 games. Error-free baseball against Coastal Carolina, which is one of those things that allowed ECU to be right there despite some deficiencies in free passes and then also timely hitting.
Yeah,
And
I think it was brought down there a little bit. Boucher started off a little slow with the errors, but like you said, they started to pick it back up. He's starting to look a little more comfortable. It might have been in his head there for a while during the first part of the season, the 6 errors, but that's not typical of him from what everyone has said in his history. So I think he's gotten over that, and the team as a whole, definitely needs to be solid up the middle. Most important aspect of the game, and I think that'll shore up, and it's looking a lot better on that part.
and the only error that we had on the week was a failed pickoff attempt by Brad Zayak in the Gardner-Webb game. So just excellent defense, and hopefully that will continue moving into what is a 5-game week, as John mentioned, Tuesday and Wednesday at the Diamond against VCU, and then the William & Mary Tribe will be in town this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Taking a look at those clubs to date, starting with the VCU Rams. They are 4-10. They opened their season dropping 2 out of 3 to College of Charleston down in Charleston, of course, falling 10-0, 12-2 before winning 10-9. The following weekend, they went to Clemson, just were able to play 2, but lost 2 very competitive games, 6-2 and 4-3. They've also played the Tar Heels, dropping a midweek game 9-4. Penn State's off to an excellent start. Penn State defeated VCU 16-7, and then most recently this weekend, after having a midweek game against William & Mary postponed because of weather, they took 2 out of 3 at the Diamond against the Princeton Tigers, winning 4-0 and 11-0 in games 1 and 3, and dropping the middle game 11-4. As far as William & Mary has given up a ton of runs to date. You'll recall that crazy game that the Pirates had with the Tribe last year in Williamsburg.
Yeah, I remember.
William & Mary's 4-11, and on opening weekend, I know you saw this, John, or at least I think you did. I think we texted about it. But
I
Rhode
saw it.
Island in Game 3, they lost to the Rams 36-22.
And that was in 7 innings.
Yeah,
And the Rhode Island had 17 runs in 1 inning. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. But
you had
yeah,
that.
William & Mary has a propensity to give up a lot of runs this year. I mean, if you look at through their scores,
Yeah,
they've given up 14, 17. The last 2 games against Kansas State, they've given up 37 runs in 14 innings. So
yeah.
it might be a good time for ECU to get their bats alive and going. But yeah, I remember the William & Mary game last year with ECU. It was one of the more back and forth type things going on. I just couldn't believe what was going on up there. And I think I was driving to Charlotte and listening to the game when it was going on. And every time I tuned back in, something crazy had happened. A lot of runs, wild pitches, everything.
Yeah, team batting average is 254 now. After this week, um, hopefully we'll see it up there. Approaching 280 or so.
Yeah, yeah. So
But
when I haven't looked at ECU schedule. When does the conference start?
it is on the following weekend. Memphis comes to town,
Okay, Memphis. Okay, all right.
and here in just a moment, we'll take that look around the American. Um, let's in fact let's do that right now. Um, in the American Athletic Conference, UTSA has won 14 straight. Not a particularly challenging schedule. I'll let you elaborate more on that in a second, John, because I know you've looked at what the Roadrunners have done. They're 15-3 again, winners of 14 straight, 7-4 midweek win over A&M, and then a sweep of Texas Southern. UAB is off to a 13-3 start. They've won 3 straight and 7 of their last 8. This week they had a midweek win over Auburn at Regions Field there in Birmingham. This weekend they were in Greenville, South Carolina, taking on Michigan State, Winthrop, and Cornell. They lost to the Spartans, but then bounced back with wins over Winthrop, Cornell, and those same Michigan State Spartans to go 4-1 on the week. FAU is 12-3 after dropping a midweek game to the Florida Gators in Gainesville 4-2. They took 2 out of 3 from FIU after dropping the series opener. Tulane's 11-3 after a 3-2 win on Monday at Long Beach State. A rare Monday game because they had played out at Pepperdine last weekend, and then this weekend they defeated North Dakota State 2 out of 3, losing the series finale 12-3. Memphis, the Tigers are 9-6, and they had a midweek win over Arkansas Little Rock, and then dropped 2 of 3 to Southeastern Louisiana. Charlotte, how about Charlotte with Blake Gillespie? I mean, he threw a no-hitter on Friday in a 5-0 victory over James Madison, and then they won games 2 and 3 by 8-5 and 3-2 scores to sweep the Dukes, following a sweep at the hands of Arkansas, but 3 games in which they gave the Razorbacks everything they wanted and then some, losing 11-10, 8-5, and 4-3, of course, in Fayetteville. South Florida 7-7. They dropped 2 out of 3 to Villanova. After winning the opener 3-2, they fell 12-9 and 8-5 to the Wildcats. Wichita State, the Shockers, got a much needed sweep of showing my age there. I started to say Southwest Missouri State. Missouri State at X Stadium in Wichita, 7-5, 4-2, and 9-8 after dropping a midweek game to Abilene Christian at Globe Life. And then Rice. It's still hard for me to believe, even though it's been the case for several years now. Rice 2-13, losers of 9 straight, and they got thumped by Houston, their crosstown rival, 18-1 at Reckling Park in the midweek, and then were swept by the Yale Bulldogs at Reckling over the weekend, 8-4, 11-8, and 7-4. So, what are some of the things that stand out for you, John, about the American thus far?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Rice. I grew up in, Rice baseball, perennial powerhouse, always a threat to go to the World Series. And I'm kind of flabbergasted at what's happened with that program down there. But yeah, last several years, they're just non-existent really in the conference. As far as Wichita State goes, they needed those 3 wins. They had not been playing well. I know that's a huge disappointment for them. People were expecting a lot more from Wichita State this year, but I have seen it in the past where they started slow and they came on pretty strong towards the end of the year. As far as UTSA goes, well, we'll see who they are, see if they've been playing, an easier schedule per se, but they're going to Dallas Baptist for 3 games. They play at Texas midweek, and then they got to come to Charlotte for 3 games after that. Then Texas, and then 3 at home with FAU, which probably going to be a little breather for them, and then at TCU. So their schedule is going to kind of show who they are, see what they can do. But going to UNC Charlotte, that's not going to be easy for them. Charlotte's a lot tougher than people think. So, but yeah, at Dallas Baptist, that's going to be tough. Dallas Baptist is showing that they're starting to be an every year top 20, top 15 team. And so we'll see where UTSA stands after that. So other than that, I really hadn't looked beyond that. I just kind of disappointed with Rice, and I was wondering what was going on with Wichita State, and now they came back with 3 straight wins. So we'll see where that goes with them. I know they were probably projected to be in the top of the conference this year.
And yep, that's kind of leading into one of my final points as we start to wrap up tonight's show, and that's this 5-game stretch, or 5-game week with VCU and then William and Mary of course, those VCU games on the road, but then that following week, you have a midweek game at Segra Stadium once again against one of three matchups with the UNC Wilmington Seahawks, or UNCW as they like to be known as now. Um, but one of the things you always hear Coach Godwin saying is that you break the 56 game schedule down into 5 seasons, if you will. We went 5-6 in the first 11 game segment. We're off to a 2-2 start. Clearly, we need to make up some ground. We're 7-8 at this juncture. To get to 8-3 in that second 11 game segment, we clearly need at the very least a 4-1 week, but 5-0 would be awesome.
Yeah, and I was wondering there after our little run here if we were going to have remnants of what happened when that season we opened up with, going down the first series to Bryant, and ended up that year hosting a regional against Texas, and it was a heartbreaking season at the end of the season after looking like we were going to Omaha after starting the season, losing 3 games to Bryant. So anything can happen in the season. So still a long way to go, but they need to turn it around and start winning more. And good things are starting to happen, it looks like, and start getting some of these players back and get healthy. And I think everything will be okay.
And after that game against UNC Wilmington, about a week and a half from now, you will have the conference opening series against the Memphis Tigers. So yeah, if we go into these next 9 games, it's a stretch where obviously they're all important, but this is a stretch where at least on paper, and certainly nothing's a give me, as you know, especially in the game of baseball. But this is a stretch where hopefully the Pirates can make some hay and really start to position themselves to win a 6th straight regular season conference title, and then obviously build that resume where we can put ourselves in position to be in that large team.
Yeah, and the conference is coming up, and obviously that's important. And you got to win your conference. And this year, they need to start tightening things up. Typically, ECU is the one gimme, even for an at large bid. So, yeah, you always want to be in a good position and not have to win the conference tournament. The conference tournament's tough to win, but yeah, now conference is coming up. These are important weekends, and you got to win your series, and hopefully they can win a lot of them. They got Rice after the Duke game on Tuesday, March 25th, and then they got the Wilmington after that game. So yeah, it's like Coach said. You got to break the season down, and you start winning, and winning your conference, most important thing, and then moving on to the rest of the parts of the season that he's referring to. So,
And depending on how things go in the conference this year, if things don't improve from where it's been in recent years, those midweek games against the single game against Duke, and 3 against the Seahawks and 2 against the Wolfpack, those will really carry a lot of weight, since we went 1-5 against North Carolina and Coastal Carolina. That North Carolina, unless they just really falter, that series, despite getting swept, will bode well for the Pirates from an RPI standpoint. And since you dropped the Coastal Carolina series, hopefully you'll have some quality RPI wins with those midweek games that I mentioned.
yeah, they'll need to take advantage of all those they can. I see UAB beat Auburn, like you mentioned, and now they have Alabama coming in this week. So, if they win teams like that, they win games like that, they start getting, RPI rankings go up, and that's always good at the end of the year for when they just start deciding if you don't win your conference championship. So, or your
And that UNC
tournament.
sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, John, but UNC Wilmington, what a series that was this weekend down at Pete Taylor Park in Hattiesburg. They won game 1. The Golden Eagles walked the Seahawks off in game 2, and I have not even had a chance to look up what happened today. Are you aware?
No, I was not, but I know that UNCW is a tough challenge. So typically, they always come strong for ECU. That's a big rivalry game in their eyes. So, um, yeah, I'm looking it up real quick.
Yep, I got it right here.
Yeah.
7-4 Southern Miss.
Okay. Oh, Southern Miss. Oh, yeah, yeah, Southern Miss. That's right. Yeah. Now that speaking of Southern Miss, that conference, Troy and Southern Miss and the other big team. I can't think of it right now, but yeah, the Sun Belt's got a top three there that look to be regional type teams. And Southern Miss, a lot of people think they could even host a regional eventually. So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah,
But
Sun Belt's been the fifth best league in America in the last couple years. Troy's ranked, Coastal, and
yeah,
then you just go
yeah,
through there.
the
Um,
team we're playing today, I forgot Coastal. Yeah, Coastal, Troy, Southern Miss. Yeah, excellent top three. I haven't looked at the rest of there, but I do know they're all three from the Sun Belt.
and then you have Georgia Southern. Louisiana was supposed to be good. They are off to a little bit of a slow start, to say the least, at 7-9, trying to put themselves back into a regional contention, much like the Pirates. But John, always enjoy talking baseball with you, and appreciate the time. We certainly would love to have you back on Jungle Tales, and specifically this week in Pirate baseball, to take a look back at the week that was for ECU later on in the season.
Thank you, Bub. I appreciate you asking me to join. I had a pretty rough week at work this week, but I was able to catch up on the games and try to speak intelligently towards them. So hopefully I can come back and we can talk more Pirate baseball.
Pirate Nation, that is former East Carolina right-handed pitcher from the Coach O era, from 1988 to 1991, John White. Be sure to follow us on social media, on X, Instagram, also YouTube. We can be found at Jungle Tales Pod on Facebook and Spotify. You can find us by simply searching Jungle Tales, a Pirate baseball podcast. We're trying to get things squared away to get the show on Apple Podcast as well, but that has not happened as of yet. Have had a few requests for that, and have run into some issues trying to get that Apple account squared away. But again, we appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, comment, all those good things. And we'll talk to you soon. We'll hopefully have on deck as we preview VCU and then William and Mary for this coming weekend. But that will do it for this edition of This Week in Pirate Baseball. We'll talk to you here in the next couple days. And as always, go Pirates.